So I wanted to take a few moments to talk about some of what's available on the Portapack. So to turn it on, you just hit this button once and it'll load up. I actually just upgraded to the latest and greatest Mayhem firmware. So I have all the latest features. Now at the top, you're going to see various different icons that are going to allow you to do different things. On the right hand side, you're going to see the SIM card status. So if you see OK with green, it looks like your SIM card is working. Now the SIM card is a way to fit additional apps, as some of the previous firmware versions had run out of space. So now you can actually hold some of these apps right on the SIM card, along with the maps and different things for some of the applications. Now, if you go to the left, you have this other little icon. This is new in the latest firmware. It wasn't before the upgrade, but if you note, as I activate it, it seems to be a way to lighten the screen, so possibly to save power, possibly to make it a little less bright for those surrounding the area. And as you go over, you see the volume. Now, I mentioned this in my previous video on how to install laptop speakers into your Portapack. Now, this is for sound. So this is both your headphone jack, which is right here at the bottom, and then also the speaker. If you follow my video and install a laptop speaker, you'll be able to hear it right on the Portapack, or you can even buy a speaker. But if you have a speaker, why bother buying it? So as we go over, there's other icons as well. There's things like stealth mode, like this one right here, which you see is up here activated. And when you do that, the screen will turn off. And what that does is it just allows you to have a more stealthy transmit. If for whatever reason, if you're doing ethical pen testing and you have a contract with a company or whatnot, now you can take screenshots as well. Now, when we go over to the left-hand side, so you're going to use these little arrows here to navigate around some of the selections. Now, you also hit this middle button here to activate where you're actually highlighting. So when we go to the very left, we can go to the applications, and you can actually see who contributed to the Portapack and the HackRF, and also the Havoc firmware, which is the precursor to the Mayhem firmware, and also the original Portapack firmware. So that's nice. They have some credits there. And you have a variety of options here. So you have a receive section. That's for receiving. Now, I'm not sure about the laws of all countries around the world, but I do know in the US, you can pretty much receive anything. So you have the option to receive, ADSB, which is like flight data, which allows you to see where planes are, who owns them, their location, and it even has a nice little map app that allows you to see the planes that are currently flying and where they are on the map. Now, this is for boats. So if you're near a waterway, you might actually pick up some stuff on that. You can even receive Bluetooth on this. Now, there's a lot of reasons that you can't actually work as well with Wi-Fi because it's a much wider band. And that prevents it from having certain types of uses, even though the HackRF has access to that part of the spectrum. Because of the bandwidth itself, Wi-Fi, certain things may not be available on that. But there are things you can do with Wi-Fi, and I'm going to talk about that as well. So we have audio here, and you can actually listen to something. Now, you may have a wider or a more narrow band, which is the width here. So if you're listening to one where the voice is transmitting very narrowly, you might change it over to NFM or something like that. And you can test around and just play around and see how it sounds for you. So I'll turn the volume up a bit. So you can hear my speakers are working. It's obviously not on a location that we would be listening to. Just showing how this works. So when you go here, you can change it from AM to wideband FM to narrow FM as well. So you have a variety of options there for the audio receiving. Now, if you go over to TPMS cars, you can actually receive tire pressure, so nearby cars and tire pressure. You can also receive weather, analog TV. So there's actually a transmit feature on here that allows you to actually transmit a image onto a screen. So you have that as an option as well. Now, I do want to mention this as a disclaimer. Don't mess around with the transmit features until you know exactly what you're doing, and definitely don't mess with this one, because this is one that could get you in potential trouble. So you don't want to mess with that one. That's one you definitely don't want to mess with. You don't want to mess with this one, but I may talk about it more. You don't want to mess with this either. So you need to make sure you have the license to experiment with these kinds of things before you get one or before you try some of the transmit features, because you need to understand what you're doing. You could really cause some serious problems, interference, even with medical devices. So you need to be cautious when playing with one of these and know what you're doing, and make sure to look into the features before you just start playing around with the transmit area. And I haven't actually played with much of the transmit on this myself, but I do have plans to, in a controlled environment, to do a demonstration. So I do have some ideas on things I want to cover just to show how it works, and also to demonstrate some security features and lack thereof. So you have the ability to capture and replay. So everyone's familiar by now with replay attacks. Now, the thing about that is, this isn't just going to, unlock a car as some of the hyperbole that the media reports on. So, since the 1990s, rolling codes were implemented, meaning you couldn't just capture next to a car a key fob and then hit the button and replay that. So you would capture with this and then replay it. Now, with the latest security with rolling codes, that code cannot be used again. So if you're in the vicinity of a car, of course, it's not going to work traditionally. Now, there are other techniques, like things like adding in some sort of jamming to prevent that from happening. So there are ways that replay attacks can work. But this is also a half duplex, which means it can only transmit or receive. Can't do both at the same time. But you can get a second device if you're looking to test your own security. Of course, never use this with anyone's device that you don't have explicit permission to do so. Now, there's also some utilities here, so you can go and you can actually calculate antenna lengths, which is pretty neat that it's all built in, so that can save you some work. It has a frequency manager, a notepad, has IQ trim, has a flash utility, which allows you to flash the latest firmware. So as you can see, I have the firmware on here, and I can actually flash it right on the Portapack. So that's pretty neat. We also have a calculator. We have a notepad up here, so you can actually write things down, and you can write notes down for things you may be working on with the HackRF and Portapack. So you also have a file manager, so you can go through and see some of the things you save. So for example, if you were recording a signal, you may want to replay that later. Let's say you want to make a copy of one of your remote controls for, say, your fan or your lights, something along those lines. You could easily do that, and you can save things to a file because you have a storage SD card. And when you do that, you'll be able to then replay it, and you can even program your own remotes, which is really cool. So as you see right here, there's a way that you can work with remotes. You also have a scanner, so you can scan for various things and signals that are active, and then you can save those. You can also listen in on those, so pretty neat there as well. We have the looking glass, which I briefly showed. Now, this is really neat as well. So as you can see, I have it preset right now on Bluetooth and Wi-Fi range. So I can actually change that with this dial here. So as you note, the actual frequency changes each time I move this over. So it gives you a starting point, and then you can move down here, and you can actually use this to really isolate down to an exact frequency. Now, once you find something that you want to listen to, maybe we want to see what this is, we can click on it. And when we click that middle button, it takes us right over to it. And then you can go here and you can see if it's anything worth listening to. Now, of course, not everything. There's a ton of different types of transmissions that are happening out there. So you can't expect everything to be clarity and voice, because most signals are not people talking. That's just what radio is used for, just about everything these days. Anything wireless is radio based. So you have a ton of options in the HackRF. You can even change it over to HackRF mode. So if I click on this, it will turn into HackRF mode. So I can then plug it into my computer and use it like I normally would the HackRF. Then when I want to come back to it, I just simply hit the reset right there, and I'll be able to use the Portapack once again. So that is a little bit of an overview on some of the features here. There's just so many of them, and I do look forward to covering some of these individually as well. It's really an impressive little device, and like I said, don't abuse it. If you get one, use it for responsible purposes. Use it only to test your own devices if you even bother with the transmit. You don't even have to mess with the transmit features. There's a ton of receive features that make it worthwhile in itself. So you could check out and explore different devices in your area, and you can also track flights, and completely legally in the US, because it is one of those safety features, to be able to track these flights as well, and it is public information. There are requirements for flights to share this data with the public, so it is legal to receive. Now, do not mess with the transmit features unless you know exactly what you're doing, and if you're watching this video, you probably don't know exactly what you're doing with some of these apps. So make sure to look into it before you mess with any transmit features. We may explore some in demonstration, just for a controlled environment demonstration, just to show what this thing's capable of. But it's a really cool device, and I wanted to cover, since I updated to the latest greatest firmware, I thought I would share some more on what the HackRF can do with the Portapack. Since you have so many cool features, you even have games. You can play Tetris, you can do a ton of different things. I have yet to play this game yet, but we're not going to play that. There's also Pac-Man, so there's a lot you can do with this. It's a little handheld device that has a lot of fun built into it. So I hope you like my little overview of some of the apps that are found on the Portapack. I'll be exploring more of these, but I thought it would be a good idea to just kind of do a little overview and talk about which apps are available, and we can make the best of it and make the most of this by taking advantage of some of the apps and possibly a combination of apps. So we'll be looking into more of this in the future. Make sure to like the video, share it, and subscribe, and I will be back later with more on the HackRF radio, how to protect your security and privacy.